So I'm getting ready to do this carbon fiber turtle deck. This is my mold. It's pretty simple shape on the turtle deck. And then I'm going to do some work to make it so that it hinges open and close. But I'll do all that after the fact. I'm doing some additional layup and support on the inside. One of the things I don't like about the factory Lexan one is that it vibrates real bad. Even with the support across, the aluminum support across it for the hinge, it still vibrates quite a bit, especially in a slip. So what I'd like to do on this one is determine where the fold line is going to be, and then I'm going to put in some carbon fiber bracing supports, either crisscross or however I'm going to do it, and I'll show you that later. It'll be after I fit it to the airplane, bring it home, then I'm going to lay up the inside supports to try to limit that vibration. I'd like to get rid of it completely. So I've got the carbon fiber already cut. We got a couple layers of wax on. I'm waiting for that to dry. And then I'll go ahead and throw on some mold release. Yeah, I hope to do the layup tonight. That way it gives it time to dry overnight. I can take this down, pull it out, cut the shape, and then take it down to the airplane and see if I can get it to fit tomorrow. So here we go. The layup is done. It took about an hour and a half. It's 4 layers. You got a twill weave, a directional running this way, then a directional running that way, and then a twill weave on top. So I hope to get I'm kind of curious about the directional stuff to see if it stiffens it up very much. Then I've done a peel ply on top. That helps suck some of the resin out. Just talking about materials, that was 5 yards. I've got that much left over in the twill and that much left over in the directional. All the materials here, we're talking somewhere around $400, $450 to do this turtle deck by the time I'm done. Get this drying overnight. We're gonna pull it tomorrow and then cut it to fit, take it down and see if it fits on the airplane. Okay, so next I'm gonna cut the edge of the layup out of the mold on both sides. See what that looks like. And down the edge there. I'll have to cut the excess off the top to get it out. But it's very rigid. I'm actually surprised how rigid it is already. So I may not need to do a whole lot of reinforcing using those directional layers. And here's the difference in the directional layers. You got your weave here, and your directional layer is just strands running one way, and then they're kind of stitched together, but not very well. You can see it just pull out, but all the strands are running one way versus the twill, which weaves it one way and with a crisscross every 2. Alright guys, so about 4 hours of work, and there we have the carbon fiber turtle deck. What I'm going to do real quick is weigh it and see if it saved any weight at all over the Lexan one. Alright, so you're going to read off here what it says. So I've got my assistant here to help me out. So I'm just going to balance it, and you're going to read about what it says here.
It says about 8.59 pounds.
8.59 pounds for the factory turtle deck. New carbon fiber one.
About 4.29 pounds.
So how much less?
About
Over
4 pounds.
Over 4 pounds. What was the first one? 4.6?
8.
4.3 pounds lighter. I just shaved another 4 pounds off. What's up?
Nice.
Alright, something that doesn't usually happen is it fits almost perfectly right out of the get-go here with the trimming I did. The lines are all good. I got the Zeus fasteners in all but one. I need to get a really long drill bit to drill from the back side to get those ones, but there's one more on each side that goes right here. I do need to spacer out the top because the carbon fiber is much thinner than the Lexan, so there's play in there. So I need to do a shim on the back side along there that will stiffen that up. And then it's real stiff down here. I think once I shim that, I won't get a whole lot of play in it, but I'll probably put some supports across right here just to stiffen that up. But overall, I mean, it came out looking pretty cool. Come around so the sun's not glaring into the camera. There was a little teeny dent in the aluminum. And I knew it was going to show up, and it did, so there's just a little blemish right there. But I think I'm going to do a window right there. So it depends on where the seam line is for the hinge, and that kind of depends on where the flaperon comes into the turtle deck. So we'll kind of leave that and see if we can't get rid of that blemish by doing a window. I don't know if I showed this originally when I was building the plane, but if you get two of these flaperon hinges, you got to get them, of course, but you put a dowel through or a broom handle through. It then marks exactly where the flaperon shaft is going to come through the turtle deck. So I can mark that hole, go ahead and cut my hole for access, and then I have to decide how I want to slot it to get the turtle deck on and off. Turtle deck's on and done. I've got the cutouts done for the flaperon. All right, so a little video update of what's going on with the turtle deck. I decided I do want to have it hinged like the old one and give me access to the baggage compartment, especially with the extended baggage. So what I've done is I've cut a line along where I want it to hinge, which is right about where the flaperon tubes come through the turtle deck. Now I put tape on this is the side towards the cockpit, and then this is the aft side that goes down towards the tail. I put some clear packing tape and then this masking tape. Now I'm going to lay a layer of carbon back over that seam that's only going to stick to this side. And I'll have to show you kind of when I'm done why I'm doing that. But basically when this bottom part, I lift it up, when it hinges that way, this overlap that I'm making right here will flip up like that. And so when it's closed, it's going to make a seal. And because that's the tail, this is upside down right now, if it doesn't make any sense. Let me flip it over. Okay, so now we're looking at, this is the front of the plane, that's the tail of the plane. This part's going to flip up, and you can see the hinge line right here. There will be a layer of carbon underneath that overlaps the top piece. So when it's closed, the water will run down and it won't have anywhere to go. It'll just hit that opening, but there'll be carbon underneath that's attached to the bottom, and the water will flow right past. So it should be waterproof. And the same thing on the sides, so that it kind of comes in and makes a seal. All right, so I did 2 layers of carbon fiber to close that seam. I'll come back through and reopen that cut that I made where I left a couple tick marks. And then that will separate this bottom piece. We'll have this extra layer that overlaps the top piece. That whole piece will come off, and I'll put the hinge on it to make those two work together. I'll explain a little bit more once it's all done, because again, this concept's mostly in my head, so it's hard to vocalize it. All right, guys, so I'm into this turtle deck project where, I've had it on the plane for a couple months, and having it one piece with that extended baggage compartment, it's just too difficult to get into the baggage. The Kitfox is really not very user-friendly with the way the seats have, with that back support behind the seats where you can't fold the seat forward and lean into the baggage compartment like you can in a Highlander. So it really leaves you, the only option is to get into the baggage compartment from the turtle deck. And that is a great option. When you have the hinged turtle deck, you have excellent access, very easy access to the baggage compartment, especially with my extended baggage. That's really the only way to get to that back part is through the turtle deck. And with the one piece, it's still removable, but you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, and 11 Zeus fasteners you have to undo and walk around the plane to undo them all. Then you have to lift it off, and you got to be careful getting it up over the flaperon control arm coming in. So, on my Model 5, I had a turtle deck that was
aluminum with a piano hinge that folded up, and that really sold me on having the hinged turtle deck. So when I built the original turtle deck, I did the Kitfox Lexan hinge option. And all that is it's basically a shower door hinge. It's a piece of plastic that's flexible. The problem is it doesn't hold up to sun, to UV. And after just a year, I had a 6-inch crack in that hinge from the corner in. And so my turtle deck was flapping, and it started to do the same thing on the other side. So that's just not a solution that I want to entertain with the carbon fiber. I've talked to some other guys that have used that hinge, and they've had the same issue. So I don't think it's a good product. I think there's a better way to do it. The other issue with the piano hinge is it's not waterproof. So water would come down that turtle deck and go right through that hinge area, right into your baggage compartment. So you have to tape it off, and that didn't work. With the one from Kitfox, it was somewhat waterproof, but that only came to the corner. And then where that stopped, you'd have a gap there where you had a little bit of leak. And then, of course, where the flapper on control arm comes through, you usually have to cut a groove down so that you can get the turtle deck off. If you hinge it, you don't have to do that. You can just have an opening like I've got here now. I did have it cut, and I saved those pieces, and I put them back on. And then I have a step or a tongue that sticks out past it that now mates in with the upper portion of the turtle deck. And as I was designing that, I originally had this idea to use these marine hinges, recess them, so cut out the carbon fiber so they're flush with the top of it. And they're double point hinges, so as you flip up one side, it reaches its 90-degree max. There's a second hinge point that then hinges the whole thing so it can come all the way to 180 degrees. And these are real common on a boat. So I got these, and they would go, basically right there and there. The problem is that there's nothing holding the two pieces from rattling. The tongue underneath will prevent this bottom piece from lifting up, but there's nothing that would prevent it from bouncing down, and you're going to get slap and noise there. So you could do more hinges, but I was starting to not like the idea. So as I was trying to develop this corner piece of how I wanted it to slide in, because the same issues is there on this as well. You have the piece on top has a Zeus fastener, and then the Zeus fastener for the bottom isn't until back here. So you're going to get this wiggle here. And I already saw that with the way I had it set up. This corner would kind of catch the air and would kind of pull out. So that's why I did this tongue that sticks behind the upper piece. But there's still nothing that's going to prevent it from pushing in. So I don't want to get a rattle here from the airflow. So if this tongue stuck into the top piece, and then the top piece had a tongue that came out behind this, or basically a groove that tongue slid into, then that would be locked into place. So I started thinking about how I was going to do that and make it so it wouldn't be very hard for it to close and for it to line up when you close it. And then I got to thinking about it, and I said, why don't I do that with the whole thing, so that it's basically a groove on this side, a tongue on this side, and I just slide it in, then fasten the bottom part, and that seam is basically waterproof. I don't need a hinge, right? What's the point of a hinge? To get into this portion, and you hinge it up, then what? You lay it back on top of itself and ends up scratching everything up when it lays on top, because the screws for the windshield are up there. It will end up scratching the bottom piece. I had that happen with the Lexan. And I was thinking about what's really the purpose of the hinge, because I can pull this piece out and I can just still set it up there. Or if it's windy, I can set it down on the ground and I still have the access, and then when I'm ready to go, it's the same amount of work. Just pop that back in there and then fasten those same fasteners that I was going to have to undo to use the hinge. So I'm going to eliminate the hinge altogether and make a tongue and groove fit for this bottom piece into the top piece is the short version of the story. So it's interesting when you're working on a project like this and you get into it and you start to change your design. Hopefully you don't go too far down a path that you can't recover from when you get the idea to change it and have to start over. I caught this one just in time. I think this is a better solution than using the hinge. I'm kind of excited about it. and I think it's going to serve the purpose really well. Where I did run into a problem is the sequence, because I already started working on this hinged line. I do want to put another layer of carbon fiber on the top. Before I do that, I was trying to decide if I wanted to do windows, how I was going to do windows, and that, you know, there's a whole scenario I've been running through my mind on how to put the Lexan into the carbon fiber, whether you make it permanent, how you would lay it up with the Lexan in there. If you put carbon over it, you can't just lay carbon over it and leave it because you won't have a finished edge. So how do you do all that? So I've got it pretty well planned out in my head on how I would do that, but when I'm all done, what I want to do is use a new top layer of carbon out of this honeycomb fabric. And if you haven't seen the video of the new shock fairings and of the wing strut fairings that I have on the wing struts for this Kitfox, they both use this honeycomb fabric as a top layer. It's really decoratively, I think it's a very beautiful fabric. It looks great under clear, and mostly I want everything to match. So I ordered the same fabric that DC Composites is using on those fairings, and I'm gonna lay this on top of the whole piece when I'm done and get a nice finish on it. The reason I brought this up is because what I should have done is gone ahead and done this already. When it was all one piece, before I cut anything, I should have laid it all up, because I want it to match from the top to the bottom. So I don't want to have a break in the pattern. The only way to do that is to lay it all up in one piece. But I've already cut the two apart, which isn't a huge deal because you could just tape them back together and cut it from the bottom. But where I screwed up is I went ahead and I already did the tongue layer, and that overlaps the seam that I would have to cut when I put that new layer on top. That's kind of a problem. So basically what I have to do is be very careful in finding where this line needs to be. It's got to be exact. And then I have to be very careful on how deep I cut so I don't cut into the tongue. So I wish I had done the other layer prior to starting into this. That's something I've learned this go around. If I was to do it again, I would really think about the sequencing so that you don't run into a problem where one step conflicts with the other step. And that's something you got to really run through the whole project in your head when doing carbon fiber, because you can run into this problem. Anyway, so that's what we're doing, you know, today, probably this week. The other part of that is the fairings I made that go from the wing to the fuselage. Originally, there was bumps in it. That was to accommodate the windshield screws. And I just didn't like the way it looked. So I went ahead and used Superfill and cleaned that up so there's no bumps anymore. It's a nice smooth transition from the wing to the fuselage. And then I'm going to use that decorative honeycomb fabric as another layer on top of the bodywork of this. So these both of these need to have another layer put on them. And I'll get those done. Then we'll sand all that up and put a clear coat on it. So that's pretty much the project for what's going on right now. More carbon fiber work. All right, so you can see the two halves now that they come together with just the cut line. You have this overlapping tongue and groove system. So with one hand, let me clamp it back so I can show you guys how this is working. Comes apart. So you can see that shiny part is the tongue, and that slides back into the groove. The only issue is lining it up on these corners to get those lined up so they go in. So I may end up cutting these corners off just so it's easier to get back on, but I'm still playing around with that. It's like really tight fit right now. So I'm gonna start by taking it down, putting it on the plane, and see how hard it is to get on and off. Help me take it off. Grab the back corner.
What's that?
All right, so this is how it fits on the plane. And then if you just lift this back corner and pull back, off it comes. Just like that. And just put it back on. Line up the edges. Line up, gonna push that corner. Pull back on. I think it works pretty good. All right, guys, so I want to explain a little bit about how I'm putting a window in the top of the turtle deck. Decided to just do it on the top side. The bottom side's over there. I'll explain that in a minute. So I cut out a piece of smoked plexiglass. You can see the nice tint color to it. So it's going to be dark. And then I taped it off, and then I cut that same shape out of the carbon fiber. So this piece has been cut out. And now you can see it's covered in packing tape, and then I taped it back in place. So this isn't part of this anymore, it's just taped in place. I'm gonna remove this blue masking tape, and then I'm gonna take the honeycomb fabric that's gonna finish off the turtle deck. I'm gonna take that fabric and I'm gonna lay it over the whole turtle deck and do a layer over this. And I'm gonna cover all the way over this opening. Then what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll tape off again another width of masking tape inside this hole. And I'll cut that new fabric to make like a picture frame. And then what that will allow me to do is take the window. There'll be a layer of carbon fiber basically out to here, but there'll be a step where the window will drop into. So then the window will drop into place and be flush with the carbon fiber, both on the top and the bottom. And then to secure it in place, I can then put another layer of carbon on this side. And there's two ways to do that. I can tape this all off and tape off the window, lay the carbon, and then pull it off so that I can then trim it and have it a nice clean shape both on the outside and the inside. And then lay it over the window and glue it down in place. That's probably the way I'll do that. So that's, I think, the cleanest, most waterproof way to install the Lexan into basically carbon sheet. So that's my method on that one. And then for the bottom cowling, I'm going to stiffen it up. And I borrowed this idea from Project 2 Aero. He's building an S21, created his own cowling, and I really like what he did to stiffen it up. He went and got some of this round foam. It's in the cement section of Home Depot. And you cut it in half so that it's just a half dome shaped now. Super glued it down into the shape I want. And then I'm gonna take carbon fiber, not quite this wide. This is just a scrap piece, probably more like, that wide. And then I'm gonna lay that down over the foam, and that will add a tremendous amount of stiffness, almost like you're putting a piece of angle aluminum or a strake across there that doesn't allow it to flex. By doing that curved shape on the carbon fiber, it won't bend this way. It'll be real stiff and rigid, and that should allow for a much stiffer turtle deck. I'll also do that, some similar stiffening across above the window and below the window and on either side. So by doing that, hopefully I solve the problem of that Lexan turtle deck rattling real bad. I don't like that with the factory one. So hopefully this will be nice and stiff. Have a little window for some light. Have the bottom piece removable for the baggage compartment. This has turned into quite the project. But you can make anything out of carbon fiber. It's really amazing. You just got to think through the process and what you're doing, and you can really create whatever you want. So, all right, so the strips I put in to prevent the vibration are done, dried. So I just took the foam tubing, laid it across, and then put a layer of carbon fiber over it. So it's really not flexing at all now. So that's pretty much the underside done. I've got to pull out this panel that's been cut and then put the window in, and then finish the clear coat. And then we're just about done. So that came out pretty cool. I think that's a good way to stiffen it up. I may paint the bottom side just so it looks real clean. Just paint it black. And then I got some LED lights, strip lights to go in the baggage also. So if the turtle deck's on there, I can just flip on a light and see everything in the baggage area real well. All right, so I used a Duratec sun shield, and that's a UV protectant clear on top of the carbon fiber.
This has been quite the project trying to add the honeycomb. I don't know if I covered a whole lot of that. I wanted to match the other fairings, and so I did the honeycomb fabric on top. And doing that was kind of a pain in the butt because I didn't originally lay that layer down in the mold. It ended up not having a smooth finish on it, so I had to add layers of epoxy up. And then some of the layers I got slight discoloration in. So it's not perfect. So there is a little bit of, variation in color in it. I still need to buff it out, but pretty dang cool either way. We'll get it all smoothed out, buffed, and then the window put in, and get it back on the airplane. All right, so here's the finish. I haven't put a wax on it yet, but that's all the way through polish. See some of these little white spots? Those are the pinholes on the side. It can be fixed. More time sanding, but window will go in on that one next. This one I just finished with the 1500 grit. So the way this Duratec Sun Shield goes, it's basically just a fiberglass resin, but I'm going from basically a 320 sand, 600, 800, 1000, 1500, and then I got their fiberglass polish compound. So you go the 1100 or the 1101, then you finish off with 1103. Hit with a little Meguiar's after that. That's the rubbing compound, Meguiar's. And then that got it to that point. So this one's, you can see how shiny it is through that phase. I think a wax will then take the final dullness off of it. Super smooth. All these little white spots, I'll get those out so that they won't show as much. But, there's things you learn each time you do things, and there's a lot of things I learned that ways I wouldn't do it again. Obviously, laying that carbon fiber up, that decorative layer over the top, ended up being a huge hassle, mostly because I put it on upside down. You can see through the water, there's like a straight band. It should be threaded, so on the other side of that, it's threaded. So that band sticks up, so this whole thing was raised. So then I had to build up the resin layer to get above that, and then work my way back down. And then, of course, you end up sanding back into some of those, and you get the pinholes. So, obviously with my mold, I could have laid that fabric in first with the proper side up, and I would have avoided a lot of this. So if I ever make another one, I've learned quite a bit on this, and that's kind of the whole point behind it. You can see what a mess the shop is, sanding, and it's getting nice and toasty in here. I'm up to about 80 degrees, not that bad yet, but yep. So I'll finish up the polish on that one, and then I like to fly this week, so kind of done screwing around with these. So I'm gonna get the window put in, and then get this thing on the airplane and go do some flying. All right, so I got the turtle deck all done, windows in. Came out pretty good. I like the design. The finish work on the carbon, there are some pinholes that I can take care of later. Just want to get it flying again. So that whole bottom half comes off so you can get to the baggage compartment. And then the other part that ended up painting black are the wing root fairings. See, they're nice and shiny on top. So pretty much finished out right now. Next thing to do is the lights for the piggyback stow wing. We don't have any lights on them yet, so I got to figure out a landing light, and then the position lights will go on where this tape is. So that's the next plan. All right, so I finished flight testing the turtle deck, and it's worked out great. So the window placement was really kind of lucky, but it's perfect. When I look over my shoulder to clear, back behind me,
It's the perfect height for just looking over your shoulder right through the window, and I'm not feeling like I'm missing anything by not having a larger window. Also, the stiffeners I put in have really made it so it doesn't move at all. Even in the slip, I haven't seen any movement on it. I think overall it turned out great. So I'm pretty happy with it. The finish on it, you know, obviously I learned a lot there, but for the most part, I'm really happy with it. And it's definitely an upgrade that's worth doing.